ध्यायेत् शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणेश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनाध्यासितं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षादात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामज्जताव पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। Namo Ramana. As usual, the Friday Satsangh, we have been reading Bhagavan's Upadesham from book Self-Enquiry, 1900 to 1950. Ramana Answers. It's a collection of all the questions and answers on the subject of Atma Vichara, a compilation by our founder, President Sri A.R. Natarajanji. We will be actually reading the last question from the 1900 to 1930 segment of the book. It's a great grace that Bhagavan has made us come up to this point by his immense blessings. We will be looking at the last question, contemplating on it, and then having a 20-minute Atma Vichara session. After that, Akka would be talking about Atma Vichara from Ramana Gita, and then we will have the concluding prayers to Bhagavan. The question that we are looking today is the last one, as I mentioned, from Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1930. The devotee asks, so it is wrong to begin with a goal, is it? The question is, so it is wrong to begin with a goal, is it? Bhagavan says, if there be a goal to be reached, it cannot be permanent. The goal must already be there. We seek to reach the goal with the ego, but the goal exists before the ego. What is in the goal is even prior to our birth, to the birth of the ego. Because we exist, the ego appears to exist too. If we look on the self as the ego, then we become the ego. If as the mind, we become the mind. If as the body, we become the body. It is the thought which builds up sheaths in so many ways. The shadow on the water is found to be shaking. Can anyone stop the shaking of the shadow? If it should cease to shake, you would not notice the water, but only the light. Similarly, take no notice of the ego and its activities, but see only the light behind. The ego is the I thought. The true I is the self. I'll read Bhagavan's answer once again. If there be a goal to be reached, it cannot be permanent. The goal must already be there. We seek to reach the goal with the ego, but the goal exists before the ego. What is in the goal is even prior to our birth, to the birth of the ego. Because we exist, the ego appears to exist too. If we look on the self as the ego, then we become the ego. If as the mind, we become the mind. If as the body, we become the body. It is the thought which builds up sheets in so many ways. The shadow on the water is found to be shaking. Can anyone stop the shaking of the shadow? If it should cease to shake, you would not notice the water, but only the light. Similarly, take no notice of the ego and its activity, but see only the light behind. The ego is the I thought, the true I is the self. Bhagavan here is giving us a wonderful perspective to look at things. He is saying here, the goal is already present. Instead of what he means by that, lot of times when we actually sit down for Atma Vichara, sit down for meditation, we don't sit with this thing that the goal is already present. We think that we have to reach the goal. I am very disturbed. I am having a lot of thoughts. We sit with that as our true reality now, and then expect in the due course of the meditation for it to subside and become quietened. And then we attribute for the vichara, the exercise that we would have done in the form of meditation has made us get there. But Bhagavan is giving a new perspective here. Let's look at that. He's saying, if there is goal to be reached, it cannot be permanent. Therefore, we can also experience the same thing. We may do a meditation for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, but it is not kind of permanent because we feel that we have achieved that goal by a process, and now that we have stopped the process, therefore the goal is going to deficit away. That's the way. So we are still holding on to the thoughts, to the ideas in which how we are approaching the truth. So Bhagavan is giving this perspective here. He's saying the goal must already be there. He is very clear. The truth, if it is something we say is truth, and it cannot become untrue at some point in time. That means it becomes true only when we sit for meditation and do something, but becomes untrue after a while is not the truth. Then we are still holding on to something, some concepts, some ideas within us. We have not seen the truth in its real light. Therefore, we will be making attempts to reach it. So, but Bhagavan is saying the goal must already be there. If truth must already be there, it is not something that will come upon by some exercise or some understanding or any of those things. It's one perspective. We can look at it this way. Then we seek to reach the goal with the ego. So that's what we do. But the goal exists before the ego. It is just when the ego's, our experience, even when we approach it with the ego to reach the goal, is that when the ego subsides, the goal, the silence, the real being, the real consciousness is seen in its full light. We become completely aware in that light. And it is only when this ego, so what is this ego becomes the most important question then, which we hold on or think that that is what we are and try to approach the goal. And only when that idea of what that ego is subsides, we see the truth completely shining. So Bhagavan is saying that the truth is already there even when the ego is there. It is not that the ego, it's because of the ego the truth has vanished or anything. The ego is the the truth is the substratum. Ego only comes and goes. This is what Bhagavan is giving us, this perspective here. What is in the goal is even prior to our birth, to the birth of the ego. So the truth, the self, is there even before the birth of the ego. So, because in the deep sleeps too, the self was there. In the dream also the self was there. It is the self which was aware that nothing, there was no world, no God, no ego in the sleep. It was the self which was even aware what about the dream and the events that happened in the dream. It's the self which is now, which can recollect all of that also. So that self, that truth, that consciousness is always present. So Bhagavan is asking us to see everything as only the consciousness. So let us look at that perspective. If you look at even a thought, even if you are hearing this talk that is coming out, we can attribute that I am listening through the ears. If you hold that thought that we are hearing through the ears, then that appears to be true. If we simply think that it is always I am aware, therefore it's always through the awareness, even that appears to be true, isn't it? So it is only the thoughts that makes us feel, even though it is always awareness, it's always awareness. Deep sleep, we were aware there was no world, no universe, no God, no self, nothing, no individuality, nothing. We knew that. When the dream happened, then also we were aware. Even now, we are aware. We are aware. We are the being consciousness. Therefore, Bhagavan is saying the truth is already there even before the ego rises. But when the ego rises and gives a new perspective, it throws an idea. I can only listen through my ears. When we feel, yes, I only listen through my ears, it appears very real to us. But it is actually only heard through the awareness. It is only awareness. That is what we are kind of missing to understand. We always look at this knowledge or doing as more prominent than the natural thing that is happening, that we are always aware, we are forgetting that. We are superimposing that natural happening with the ideas and concepts, imagination of these thoughts, which are basically nothing but thoughts, and therefore it appears like that. If we could simply see everything, even if there is a big disturbance, as only an awareness, if we can see joy also as only an awareness, if we can see this ego also only as awareness, only as the self, because that is what it is at all moment in time, because it is the only truth. Instead of holding on to that, the ignorant ideas that I am an individual, or that I only hear through the ears, or that I am very disturbed, all those things that we hold, instead of seeing it as it's also nothing but awareness. Instead of seeing that also as nothing but awareness. Therefore, I am this unchanging awareness. Instead of seeing in that bright, full light of awareness, if we see in the dim, reflected light, which Akka keeps telling, of the thoughts, if we see in the reflected lights of the thought, then the truth which is there appears like that. Bhagavan explains it in the next paragraph. If we look on the self as the ego, then we become the ego. If we look at the self as the mind, we become the mind. If we look at the self as the body, we become the body. That means if you look at the awareness as an ego, a thought, let us say, there is a thought, but we are only aware. But instead of looking at it as only an awareness, if you look at whatever the content of the thought is trying to say, which may be like, nobody cares for me or something like that, then we think that, oh, I'm very egoistic, isn't it? So it is just that the same awareness is now put in the light of a thought, which is sort of an egoistic nature, which tries to be more predominantly talking about an individual. Therefore, it becomes that it appears as though self has become an ego. And the same thing, if we look at the self as mind, it appears as the mind. If we look at the self, the awareness as the body, it becomes the body. Even the body, we are only aware. But we give so much of reality to the body idea than the awareness, which is the natural experience. This is what Bhagavan is telling. This is the perspective that he is giving. It is the thought which builds up sheets in so many ways. So Bhagavan is saying here that it is the thoughts which make up the many sheets, like Manomaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Annamaya Kosha. All of these are nothing but different ideas and thoughts. And when we think that they are real, that yes, I can see the physical body, therefore this is Annamaya Kosha. Or see this prana, the breath coming and going, therefore there is another pranamaya kosha. But all of them is only awareness. If we can see it in that new perspective, that it is only the self, then where is this division? So Bhagavan is saying it's only the thought which make up all these different shades in so many ways. The shadow on the water is found to be shaking. Can anyone stop the shaking of the shadow? It should cease to shake. You should only notice the water, but would not notice the water, but only the light. If we start seeing only the self, then don't see all these variations in the form of thoughts that come into us. But we see that variations also as nothing but consciousness. We don't deny it. We don't accept it. We simply know that that's the way it is right now. It is coming in the form of these different variations, different thoughts, but it will go away. But all of it, when it is there also, I am aware. When it goes away, it is also, I am aware. Before it came also, I was aware. Therefore, my actual experience is only awareness, not all of this. And therefore, awareness is the only reality, not any of these thoughts that bring different notions. If we can see it with the complete light, then Bhagavan says that with the full light of the awareness, then we don't see these as divisions. We don't see these ripples which cause so much of disturbance to us, thinking that I should make this ripple subside, or this is a good ripple, I should continue. All those divisions will fade away. Similarly, Bhagavan says, take no notice of the ego and its activities. That's what he is saying. Don't look at the ego. All the thoughts are nothing but ego. All of that thoughts which makes us do anything, everything is ego. If we don't look at it as those, but only as awareness which has come and will fade away, then Bhagavan says, if we only see the light behind, the ego is the I thought, the true I is the self. That pure awareness which is always there as awareness is the self. Whereas if that awareness holds on to a dim light of I as an individual idea, then it becomes an ego. And after that, everything else, all the other thoughts are nothing but only egoistic thoughts. So therefore, Bhagavan says, be aware of the thoughts. No matter how many thoughts rise and whatever may be the nature of it, even if it's a wonderful thought, a spiritual thought, it is still making us limited, limiting to us. But if we can question to whom is this thought, then we are not giving attention to the thought anymore. We have turned the attention to that one which is aware of this thought, its appearance and its dissolve. We are turned to that truth which alone is. And by turning from the thought into the truth, towards the truth, and when you ask who I am, to whom is this thought, it becomes I. Then really, who am I? What do I refer to as I? It is that pure awareness, which is what I am referring to as I, not the I thought, not the individual limitation. It is pure awareness where there is no boundary, no division as good, bad, but pure only as a. It is the unchanging awareness. When we turn our attention to that, that is the real I. And every time we do that, Bhagavan says that we move away from this ignorance to that pure light, the self, the truth, which alone is. With the immense grace of Bhagavan, with which alone we could have come to this direct path. And let us do Atma Vichara for the next 15 minutes. Revathi, can you keep it for 15 minutes? I have taken additional time. Thank you.
Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Rena. Thank you. Over to Shardaka.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we are meditating upon the path of self-inquiry revealed by him, and we have also been able to sit for practice of self-inquiry. And we are meditating in this section of the Satsangh on the Ramana Gita compiled by Ganapati Muni in 18 chapters, which is actually a series of questions and answers, questions to Bhagavan and answers by him, and these have been compiled in Sanskrit. We have a similar compilation, of course a much larger compilation, in Tamil, which is Guru Vachaka Kovai. That is by Muruganar. Those are also question answers. Or rather, there are no questions there, there are just statements by Bhagavan. Here there are question answers. It is on the lines of the Bhagavad Gita. It is in 18 chapters, the Ramana Gita, and we are now in the second chapter, in which the Eka Shloki of Bhagavan is contained. The Eka Shloki is that single verse in which the entire teachings as well as the path to attain the truth has been encapsulated by Bhagavan. This is a shloka which is familiar to many. Hridaya kuhara madhye kevalam brahmamatram kevalam brahmamatram hi aham ahamiti sakshat atma rupena bhati hridivisha manasa swam chinvata majjatava pavana chalana rodhat atmanishto bhavatvam. So we are seeing this beautiful shloka, and we saw how Sri C. Sudarshanam has written a detailed commentary in English. Rather than a commentary, he has put together the various translations on this verse and pointed out again its significance, where he tells us that Atmanishto Bhavatvam is both a blessing from Bhagavan, a promise from Bhagavan, as well as a warning to us not to get distracted and not to do anything else other than being in Atmanishta. This was the emphasis in the first half of the satsang as well today, and Dilip repeatedly brought home to us the importance of Atmanishta, to see everything from the perspective of the self. When one abides in the self, then the vision becomes of the self. If one is in jnana, then what will happen? If drishti becomes the jnana drishti, then brahmamayam jagat will be brahmamayam, pashyat brahmamayam jagat. Drishtim jnanamayim kritva, making your sight one of jnana. Whatever they say, they say that if normally it is said that if one has jaundice, one sees everything as yellow. It is called the phenomenon of the jaundiced eye. Or one may say one is looking at the world through colored glasses. If one is wearing tinted glasses, then the world looks tinted. The world is not actually tinted, but because one's glasses are tinted, the world would look tinted. And when we are young, we can go to these little fairs and shandies and all that, where they sell many knickknacks for children. There are not maybe these days, but when we were children, and they would sell some plastic watches and plastic spectacles, and those spectacles will have many bright colors, magenta, purple, dark green. So if one wears those glasses, obviously the world will look magenta, pink and dark green. So it would look purple otherwise, whatever, or blue, whatever the color of the spectacles. That is if one is established in the self, then one sees everything as the self. This is also quoted by Nandakumarji as a reply given by Bhagavan to one of the lady devotees, where he says that if you want to see everything as God, then first you have to see God within yourself. So this is the injunction also given to us by Bhagavan to be Atmanishtha. Become Atmanishtha. Whatever you do to become Atmanishtha, fine. But remain in the self. Remain established in the self. Understand that that is the only worthwhile goal to be achieved. So that is the injunction given by Bhagavan. That is also given as a blessing by Bhagavan, we saw, because even he says Bhava, it is become that. Become that is a blessing, because the elders say Bhava, you become Chiranjeevi Bhava, Saubhagyavati Bhava. That's what we saw. So it's both a blessing and a warning, says Sri Sudarshanam. He also points out the significance of this verse in his little book Ekashloki, where he says that when Ganapati Muni first heard this Ekashloki of Bhagavan's, then he was absolutely thrilled to the core, and he said, this is a Ramanopanishad. This is the Upanishad of Ramana, the one verse Upanishad from Ramana, or it can also be called Hardopanishad, he said. It is the Upanishad on the Hridaya Vidya. But this chapter is not called the Hridaya Vidya in Ramana Gita. There is a later chapter which will come, which is a chapter on Hridaya Vidya. In this chapter, the Muni emphasizes the paths that are delineated in the Ekashloki to attain the self. So this is the basis of the shloka, which was composed by Bhagavan himself, and which apparently was lost and then again reconstructed by Bhagavan in the context of a conversation with Muni, wherein he himself also expanded on this shloka and spoke about it at length. And the Muni was later reminded, he said that he kept saying that I will write a commentary on this shloka. And Sri Sudarshanam says, in 1916, some of the devotees reminded Muni that you had said you will write a commentary on this shloka, Hridaya Kuhara Madhye. Then the Muni said, time for it has not yet come, but I think I should write something on the lines of a Gita as a commentary of it. So in 1917, he recorded the Ramana Gita, and therefore Sudarshanam ji, he writes that the entire Ramana Gita has come in a way from this shloka, Hridaya Kuhara Madhye, Kevalam Brahma Matram Hyahamaham iti Sakshat Atma Rupena Bhati. Hridivisha manasa swam chinvata majjatava pavana chalana rodhat atmanishto bhavatvam. So we saw that the very significant part is Bhagavan says the verse starts with Hridaya. Hrid ayam. This is the heart. The heart is something which is very dear. So this is something most intimate to us. Very dear, very intimate. But even there, even in that which is intimate, there is a even more intimate part, says Bhagavan. Hridaya kuhara madhye. Okay, the heart here is picturized as a cave. So if we see that, we can say later in the Hridaya Vidya chapter, Bhagavan will say the entire universe is contained in the heart. So this everything is contained in the heart, the world is contained in the heart, this body is contained in the heart. But where do we see the heart? Where do we first perceive the heart? We first feel that it is within us. By saying within us, we mean to say that it is somewhere within the limits of this body. The heart is within. The heart lies within me, we say, right? So within me means where? What is that within? It is within the body that we sense it. So there is an association with the body. To cut off or take our attention away from the association with the body, Bhagavan asks us to go deeper. Hridaya, that which is most intimate to me. When I try to go in, when we try to go in, asking who am I, and not giving any answer, dropping every answer because every answer rises in the form of a thought alone. Any experience, any answer has to be a mere thought. So we do not give ourselves any answers to the question, who am I? But we simply try to attain attentive. Then what happens for many of us? The experience may be that there appears to be a blank or a non-existence or nothingness, a void, because there is no answer to begin with. It may happen, for many people it happens, it is the experience of many people that they experience a blank or a void. When I ask myself, who am I? All I see is a void. It becomes totally blank. It becomes, because there is nothing. There is nothing that we can hold on to as an object. If we hold on to something as an object, then that would not be the self, because that is kevalam brahmamatram, Bhagavan is going to say. And so what do we feel? We may feel a sense of absence or a sense of darkness. Maybe to symbolize this, the phrase kuhara is used, the cave is used. Because when we first enter a cave, what is the experience that we have? The very first experience on entering a cave is the darkness. We feel it's totally dark. There is nothing in that cave. And we are not able to see anything either, because we have come from the sunlight into the cave. Here, in this case, where we are entering so-called within, we are used to the sunlight, apparent light of objective awareness. We are used to seeing objects. We are used to seeing something. We are used to experiencing something as an object. In fact, we experience ourselves also only as an object. We see ourselves as a body, we see ourselves as the experiencer who has feelings, emotions, intellect, analysis. Everything is an object. It is seen as being for me. It is my experience, and my body is also my body. My mind is also my mind. So everything is seen as an object, and there is a feeling that I know. I know that I have a body. I know that I have thoughts. I know there is a world. I know all these things are happening. So this I know, this feeling that I know is the light of the intellect through which we are grasping many experiences, one after another. When we enter within, questioning who is the I, what happens? This light of the intellect cannot work over there. It cannot grasp it, because it has to grasp something, means that has to be outside itself. It has to be other than itself. Therefore, the intellect cannot grasp it, and it may appear to be darkness. In many cases, if one holds on without worrying that nothing seems to be there, or further questioning, further diving into, or further moving into the cave, then what happens? Bhagavan says that there shines the light of the self. Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahma Matram. That the light of the self shines. It is possible that darkness could be a mere void. It is possible that darkness could be fear. The fear of losing one's identity. Many devotees have experienced that fear as part of the inquiry. That fear, it becomes manifest, but sometimes the unmanifest fear is what pushes our mind out. See, if I say, oh, it is kuhara, it is darkness, I am not able to withstand it, what does the mind do? It seeks some experience. It tries to hold on to some other thought. So it moves out. Again, it moves out of the cave into the world of objects, into the world of thoughts. It again holds on to thoughts. But again, one has to get back to the kuhara. One has to get back first to that emptiness from all other thoughts. So when one has to, as Nandakumarji often says, purge oneself of all the thoughts. All the thoughts have to be dropped. So when all the thoughts are dropped and one does not feel afraid, one, or rather, one senses maybe the fear also. And upon sensing the fear, if one continues to hold on, Bhagavan says, the fear comes because of the unfamiliarity. He tells Chadwick, it's because we are not familiar with that. We are familiar with objects. We have got used to objects. When we go into a new space, we always feel a little worried. We do not know what is going to happen. So that's the kind of a darkness. The not knowing is the darkness over there. It is not necessarily a blackness. It's not like a physical darkness. It's a darkness of not knowing. It is also possible that there could be darkness. There is fear of the vasanas. There are subtle fears and emotions could be thrown up at that point of time. So one has to remember Bhagavan's words with great faith that if one perseveres, then that Kevalam Brahma Matram is to be discovered right at the very center. So one has to move into the center. Hridaya Kuhara Madhye, says Bhagavan. Center. It is at the center. It is not at the periphery. So what is center and what is periphery? What is madhya and what is circumference? Circumference, if you see in a circle, is that which is outside, that which is external. And center is obviously internal, it is innermost. The madhya is innermost point. In fact, I am told that in mathematics, in the point disappears. There is no such thing even as a point. But that to that extent, it is subtle also. It is inner and not outer. Madhya is inner with reference to that which is peripheral, isn't it? Bahya and madhya. So the circumference, anything which is, if there is a relative inner and an outer, this hridaya, this atma should be sought in the relative inner. So what do we say? We say when we look at Dridrishya Viveka, we say the eyes are seeing, our physical eyes are seeing the objects. What is inner to the objects? The eyes, my eyes which see the world are inner to the objects. Then what is inner to my eyes? The sight in my eyes is enabling me to see the objects. The sight in my eyes is inner to my physical eyes. Now the sight, that is the physical sight in my eyes. Then there is the mental sight, which makes the physical sight possible. So the mental sight is inner to the physical sight. So there is that mental sight, there is the awareness, I am seeing. Then of course the I in the I am seeing is more central to it is more inner, more intimate, and the seeing, listening, the experience is external. So this way we come to the madhya. We have to come to the center. The center, the hridaya, is pointed out as being the center. When we keep coming more and more and more, this is called inward. Inward is the way, says Bhagavan. Inward means dropping that which is peripheral and going inner. So finally Bhagavan brings us to the point of all these thoughts are peripheral, the thoughts are for me, then who am I? So when we come to that question and just abide with it without worrying that about the apparent darkness, and one keeps holding to it and trying to dive even deeper into it with just by holding that tentativeness of that question, the intensity of the question, then Bhagavan assures us that the Brahmamatram, the only the self, will stand revealed.